Is the Blue V81 a good phone to buy in 2021? Well, in this video, we're gonna find out. What's going on, guys? Khalipas Tech here, coming back at you with another video. In this video, we're gonna be taking a look at the Blue V81 and going over what kind of value it provides in 2021. Before we go any further, I do want to remind you to go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It helps out the channel a lot. And now, let's get into the video. So this phone has a 6.5-inch IPS LCD display with a resolution of 720p, a PPI of 270, and an aspect ratio of 20:9. We got a water drop notch here for the front-facing camera, and this camera is 8 megapixels. Right now, I have the brightness at 100%, and I would say it looks pretty good. The bezels are decently thin, and despite having a pretty large display, the phone is actually not too bulky, so it's comfortable to carry around in your pocket and hold in your hand without any issues. Having a large display is going to be a real good thing if you're streaming videos, looking at photos, reading, any of that kind of stuff. Things are just going to show up bigger, of course, on a larger display, so they're going to be easier to see. Now, this phone doesn't have a Super AMOLED or a 1080p resolution or anything like that, so although the display is large and does look good overall, I wouldn't expect any type of super high-end quality from this display while you're consuming content. For that kind of thing, you are going to have to get a higher-end device, but for the average user, it's going to be pretty decent. I'm not a huge fan of the water drop notch. It's not the best look. I think a hole punch looks a lot cleaner. But that being said, it's not too bad on this phone. A lot of the other water drop notches look a little bit messier and make the phone look cheap, but this one doesn't make the phone look cheap or anything like that. It's just there and it still bothers me, but at the same time, it could be worse. For storage, we got 64 gigabytes of internal storage with micro SD card expansion, so that is pretty good for a phone in this price range. For the average user, you're probably not going to have to worry about storage ever, and if you're a power user who has lots of apps and that sort of thing on your phone, this is probably going to be this phone's biggest strength for you, because even though phones in this price range with 64 gigabytes of internal storage are obviously out there, there's really only a handful of them compared to the ones that only have 32. So if you are in this type of budget and want a lot of storage, this is going to be a good option. There's no wireless charging on this phone, which is not very surprising considering it's an entry-level phone, but we do get a fingerprint scanner and face unlock, so the security options are really nice on this one. It's good to have both because a lot of these phones in this price range don't even have one of them. You just have to put in a PIN or a password. But luckily with this phone, we do have the fingerprint scanner right here where it's real convenient and easy to reach. And we have face unlock. So let's give this fingerprint scanner a try and see how well it works. All right, there we go, one more time. And there we go. So as you can see, this fingerprint scanner is really fast and responsive. No issues here. So taking a look at the rear camera setup, we got a dual camera setup here, and honestly, it does leave quite a bit to be desired. We got a 13 megapixel main camera and a 0.3 megapixel depth sensing camera. And I personally don't know why they even bothered with the depth sensing camera if it's gonna be like that. I tried out the portrait mode on this phone and it looks pretty choppy. Overall, you're probably not going to want to use it. And in general, if you actually want to keep the pictures you take, you're probably going to want to look at a different device because the photos taken on this phone aren't really the greatest. And that goes for video as well. This phone can shoot 1080p videos in the rear and 720p videos in the front-facing camera, so it's really not very good quality. I would say it's going to be fine for Snapchat and stuff like that, and that goes for the photos and the videos. But if you actually want to keep the photos, whether it's for social media or pretty much anything else, then you're probably going to want to get a different device because this camera really doesn't have a whole lot to it. And even in this price range, you can do better. Internally, this phone is getting 3 gigabytes of RAM with the Unisoc SC9863A processor. I ran a Geekbench 5 benchmark test on the phone and it came back with a single core score of 152 and a multi-core score of 821. So for its price range, this phone actually has a decently powerful processor. Lots of other phones in this price range have much lower scores than this. And I personally haven't experienced any performance issues while I've been using this phone. So I would say if you're just gonna use your phone for basic activities like sending text messages, making calls, all those basic mobile functions, and then browsing the web, maybe some light social media use, this phone's gonna be perfectly fine and will probably give you a better experience than lots of others in the same price range. But if you're doing more high-end activities, maybe something like high performance gaming and video editing, it's definitely gonna struggle a little bit. So what I would recommend doing is running a Geekbench 5 benchmark test on your own device and comparing it to this to see if this phone would be an upgrade. This phone has a 5000 milliamp hour battery. This supports 10 watt fast charging. So I really like that about this phone. It has a huge battery, so you're probably not even gonna have to charge it at all throughout the day. And even if you do, the fast charging is gonna help you charge it up a lot faster, so you won't have to wait for it to charge for as long. And then in addition to that, having a larger battery has other benefits too. Down the road when the phone starts to get a little older and wear and tear starts to kick in, all batteries degrade, but with a larger battery like this, you're not going to notice nearly as quickly, so you'll be able to keep the phone for longer without having to replace it. So while the battery is really impressive and the processor is pretty decent on this phone, there are a couple things I really don't like about it. First of all, we got the Google Assistant button right here, and I feel like no phone should have this, because even if you do use the Google Assistant, chances are you're probably going to accidentally activate it with this button more than you're going to intentionally activate it. So I think it's just an annoyance, and they should have a better way to use the Google Assistant like pretty much every other phone does. Another thing about this phone I don't really like design-wise is that it has micro USB instead of USB-C. USB-C is in general just so much better, it's more modern. There's a reason it's so much more widely used now than micro USB. It's just a higher quality technology. And since this phone only has micro USB, it's not going to be as easy to find good accessories for it. So that's one thing I just don't like about it. Speaking of outdated technology, the other thing I don't like about this phone is that it's on Android 10. And knowing Blue, you're not going to get any updates for it. So you're pretty much stuck with Android 10 as long as you have this phone. Right now we're on Android 11, getting real close to Android 12. So getting a phone that's stuck on Android 10 is just a disappointment. So if you want the newest softwares as they come out, you're not gonna want this device. But that being said, Android 10 is still a great software that runs really well on this phone, so if not having the newest one doesn't bother you, then it should be okay. So in conclusion, is the Blue V81 worth buying in 2021? I would say surprisingly, even though there are a few things about this phone that seem really outdated, namely the micro USB and the software, I do think this phone is still worth buying in 2021 for certain people in certain situations. If you only need a phone for really basic activities, then first of all, this phone has the processing power to give you a good experience with that. And second of all, if you're only doing a couple things on your phone, then the software won't matter nearly as much. And the second reason you might want this phone is if you want a phone that has a huge battery or a lot of storage, because this phone has a large battery and 64 gigabytes of internal storage, which for the price range is a lot. So any one of those reasons, honestly, is going to make this phone worth it for you. But if you want the newest version of Android, or you want a phone that can do higher end things, or maybe you like to take really nice pictures to keep and want features like an ultra wide camera or just a better camera in general, then you're probably going to want to look at a different device. But overall, despite a few drawbacks, I would say this phone in general does provide a decent amount of value in 2021. But I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you found this information useful as well. Don't forget to leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. It does help out a lot. And as always, I will see you in the next video.